Most people think Shutter Island is about solving a mystery. Then they watch it a second time and realize it's an entirely different movie. On the surface, it's a detective story. A US Marshal arrives at a remote asylum to investigate the disappearance of a patient, only to uncover what appears to be a massive conspiracy. But watch it again, knowing the ending, and something strange happens. The first time Chuck watches Teddy, it feels like concern from a partner. The second time, it feels like a doctor watching his patient. Scenes that once appeared confusing suddenly become painfully obvious. It's as if you're watching an entirely different film hiding beneath the first one. I'm Jake Winters, and today, I don't want to review Shutter Island, explain the ending, or recap the plot. Instead, I want to peel back the layers that make it one of the greatest psychological thrillers ever made. But before we begin, this video contains major spoilers for Shutter Island. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd highly recommend watching the film first, then coming back to this video. The first layer is the one the director, Martin Scorsese, wants you to see. It follows a familiar formula that audiences instantly understand. Teddy Daniels, a US Marshal, arrives on a storm-battered island to investigate the disappearance of a dangerous patient from Ashcliff Hospital. There are suspicious doctors, secretive staff members, locked wards, and whispers about government experiments. Everything about the setup tells us we're watching a classic detective mystery. The brilliance of this opening is that it gives us exactly the kind of story we've seen countless times before. Our brains immediately start looking for clues. Who can Teddy trust? Who's lying? What's really happening inside the lighthouse? The movie encourages us to think like investigators because that's exactly what Teddy is doing. But this first layer serves another purpose. While we're busy trying to solve the mystery in front of us, we're almost completely ignoring the far more important story unfolding underneath. Peel back the second layer, and the detective story evolves into something much bigger. What starts as a missing person investigation begins to resemble a full-blown conspiracy. Suddenly, everyone seems suspicious. Dr. Naring's unsettling demeanor, the armed guards watching Teddy's every move, Rachel Salando's warnings about mind control experiments, the restricted Ward C, and the mysterious lighthouse all point toward the same conclusion. Every new piece of information appears to confirm Teddy's growing belief that something sinister is happening on the island. By this point, Teddy has become so convinced of the conspiracy that he tells Chuck, "We haven't heard the truth once yet." And on a first viewing, we completely agree with him. We think everyone on the island is lying. What's remarkable is that the audience falls for it just as completely as Teddy does. We become convinced that we're uncovering hidden truths alongside him. Every strange interaction feels like another piece of evidence. Every unanswered question strengthens our suspicions. That's the genius of Shutter Island. It doesn't simply show us a delusion, it invites us to participate in one. For over 2 hours, the audience and Teddy are investigating the exact same false reality. And that's where Shutter Island performs its greatest trick. The conspiracy isn't just fooling Teddy, it fooled us. Peel back the third layer, and the illusion starts to unravel. Once you know the truth, you're no longer watching a conspiracy. You're watching everyone carefully manage a patient. You notice that everyone already knows Teddy before he introduces himself. Chuck constantly watches Teddy's reaction instead of the investigation. He looks to the doctors for reassurance and tries to gently steer Teddy away from dangerous conclusions. He's behaving less like a fellow marshal and more like someone responsible for Teddy's well-being. Even something as small as Chuck calling Teddy boss throughout the film takes on a different meaning. On a first viewing, it sounds like ordinary partner banter. On a second viewing, it feels like another way the roleplay reinforces Teddy's identity as the lead marshal, allowing the fantasy to remain intact. The doctors choose their words with incredible precision, almost as if they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. Even the guards don't behave like soldiers protecting a secret facility. They behave like people carefully watching someone they're afraid could become dangerous. The screenplay never cheats. It doesn't lie to the audience. Instead, it relies on our assumptions to interpret events incorrectly. Every clue pointing toward the truth is present from the beginning, but we're so focused on solving the wrong mystery that we overlook them. That's an incredibly difficult trick to pull off. Most twist endings work by withholding information from the audience. Shutter Island does the opposite. It gives us almost everything we need to solve the mystery from the very beginning. The twist works not because the movie lies to us, but because it understands how we think. Once we accept Teddy as the reliable protagonist, we naturally interpret every strange event through his perspective. Of course, none of this works without Scorsese's direction. The storm, the isolated island, the oppressive architecture, the dream sequences, and the unsettling score all keep us emotionally locked inside Teddy's perspective. The movie doesn't just tell us he's becoming paranoid, it makes us feel paranoid right alongside him. By this point, it becomes clear that Shutter Island was never really about an asylum. Peel back another layer, and we see that the asylum is simply the setting where a much more personal story unfolds. At its core, the film is about trauma and what happens when grief becomes too overwhelming to confront. Teddy cannot accept what happened to his wife, or what happened to his children, nor can he escape the psychological scars left by his time as a soldier in World War II. The horrors he witnessed at Dachau, and the execution of the camp guards that followed, leave him carrying trauma long before he ever returned home. Faced with unbearable guilt, his mind doesn't simply forget the truth. Instead, he transformed what happened into a story where he's still the hero. Throughout the film, Teddy's subconscious keeps dragging him back toward the truth. Even the people he interviews reflect pieces of his own trauma. When one patient insists Rachel Solando deserves to be gassed for drowning her children, the horrors of Dachau and the fate of Teddy's own family collide in a single moment. Instead of accepting responsibility, he creates a world where there's always another mystery to solve, another villain to catch, another conspiracy to expose. As long as he's chasing answers, he never has to stop and confront the one answer that would destroy him. His investigation isn't really about finding Rachel Solando. It's about finding someone else to blame. As long as there's another villain to chase, Teddy never has to confront the possibility that the person he's really running from is himself. This is where the movie stops being merely clever and starts becoming heartbreaking. We have now reached the deepest layer of the onion. At the center of every other layer is one simple idea: guilt. The detective story exists to distract from it. The conspiracy exists to justify escaping it. Even Teddy's identity is built around avoiding it. Throughout the film, every time Teddy gets close to the truth, his mind finds another way to pull him back into the fantasy. Even Teddy's dreams refuse to let him escape. His daughter doesn't appear as a comforting memory. She confronts him. She asks why he didn't save her. No matter how elaborate the conspiracy becomes, his subconscious keeps dragging him back to the one truth he cannot outrun. When Dr. Cawley calmly explains what happened to Dolores and his children, Teddy doesn't hear a doctor trying to help him. He hears the mastermind behind a vast conspiracy. When Rachel Solando tells him that everyone on the island is manipulating him, it confirms exactly what he already wants to believe. Even the lighthouse, which Teddy imagines as the center of horrific medical experiments, turns out to contain nothing more sinister than the truth he spent the entire movie running from. Notice how Teddy's fantasy keeps finding someone else to blame. First, it's the escaped patient. Then it's Dr. Cawley. Then it's the government. Even during the mausoleum scene, Chuck suggests that perhaps the government lured Teddy to the island intentionally. The fantasy keeps creating bigger conspiracies because every new villain gives Teddy one more way to avoid confronting the guilt he carries. Even the warden's speech takes on a different meaning. The first time, he sounds like another sinister figure hiding the island's secrets. On a second viewing, his words seem directed squarely at Teddy himself. Throughout the film, Teddy searches for monsters everywhere around him, while refusing to recognize the violence and guilt he carries within himself. The film explores denial, repression, and self-deception with remarkable subtlety. Teddy doesn't consciously invent a fantasy because he wants to deceive other people. His mind creates one because the alternative is psychologically unbearable. Accepting reality would mean accepting that there was no conspiracy, there was no mastermind, there was no villain left to catch. There was only himself, and the choices he couldn't bear to live with. That's what makes Shutter Island so emotionally powerful. We spend the entire movie asking one question: what happened on this island? But by the end, we realize we've been asking the wrong question. The real question is, how much emotional pain can a person endure before the mind chooses fantasy over reality? Some viewers believe that the hospital really was gaslighting Teddy all along. That's one of the reasons the film has generated so much debate over the years. But for me, the more compelling interpretation isn't that Shutter Island is secretly about a government conspiracy. It's that the conspiracy itself is a manifestation of Teddy's desperate attempt to escape a truth he can't bear to face. The line, "which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man," reframes the entire story. Whether Teddy had genuinely relapsed or intentionally appeared to relapse, the film asks us something much deeper than whether he was pretending. It asks whether some truths are simply too painful to live with, whether forgetting can sometimes feel more merciful than remembering. It's a devastating ending, not because of the twist, but because it forces us to consider what we would choose if we were carrying the same unbearable weight. Teddy may not just be choosing between reality and fantasy. He may be deciding that a life burdened by unforgivable guilt is the life he no longer wants to live. The first time you watch Shutter Island, it feels like a detective movie. Watch it again, and it becomes a conspiracy thriller. Watch it a third time, and you begin to separate illusion from reality. Peel back the final layer, and you realize it was never really about solving a mystery at all. It was about trauma. It was about guilt. It was about a man whose mind built an entire world to protect himself from a single unbearable truth. That's why Shutter Island holds up so well after repeated viewings. Most thrillers lose their power once you know the ending. Shutter Island does the opposite. Every rewatch strips away another layer until you're no longer watching a mystery unfold. You're watching a tragedy that was hiding in plain sight the entire time. If you enjoy videos about psychological thrillers, crime fiction, storytelling, and writing, I'd love to have you subscribe. I post new videos every week. And out of curiosity, let me know in the comments what you thought about the ending of Shutter Island. Do you think Teddy had actually regained his sanity in the final scene? Or had he truly slipped back into his delusion? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm Jake Winters, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.